My brother hurt someone I love. My parents defended him at a wedding. Now he's facing the consequences in a prison. The second Claire, 23F, my girlfriend, walked in. Ethan instantly started behaving inappropriately, making her deeply uncomfortable with his totally inappropriate actions. He practically pushed our mom out of the way to be the first to hug Claire, holding on way too long until she had to physically step back. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her arm or shoulder, telling these fake inside jokes that made no sense since they just met, and literally shoving past me multiple times to sit next to her until he completely crossed the line by trying to feed her from his own fork while making intense eye contact. Claire was obviously uncomfortable but kept being polite since it was our first family gathering, and she wanted to make a good impression. The whole evening, Ethan kept bringing up embarrassing stories about me from childhood, twisting them to make me look like a pathetic fool. He told this completely fabricated story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my alleged emotional abuse, which never happened. Claire knew these stories weren't true because I'd already told her about my teenage years, but my parents just sat there nodding along like Ethan was telling gospel truth. After dinner, things got even worse. Claire offered to help clean up, trying to be helpful. I was helping my dad move some boxes in the garage when I realized I hadn't seen Claire for a while. I found her in the kitchen with Ethan literally blocking her path to the door. He had her cornered by the sink and was telling her how she deserved someone more exciting than his boring, unstable older brother. He was standing way too close and had his hand on the counter next to her hip. Claire had already told him to back off twice by the time I walked in. When she saw me, she looked relieved and immediately came to stand by me. Ethan just laughed it off like it was all some big joke, but I could feel Claire trembling. My girlfriend Claire and I have been together for 8 months, and everything was absolutely perfect, until Ethan decided to completely wreck our lives with his obsessive behavior. I guess I need to provide some background about our family dynamic for this to make sense. Ethan and I grew up in an upper-middle-class family in a small town in Minnesota. Our parents both work in real estate and make good money, but they've always been more focused on maintaining appearances than actual family relationships. Ethan was born when I was 3, and from the moment he arrived, he became the center of our parents' universe. Nothing he did was ever wrong, and somehow everything was always my fault. Growing up, Ethan showed some really concerning behavior that my parents completely ignored. When he was 6, he deliberately broke my gaming console because I wouldn't let him play when he wanted to. Instead of punishing him, my parents bought him his own and told me I should have shared better. When he was 12, he killed my pet hamster by feeding it chocolate, knowing it was toxic. But my parents said it was an accident, and that I shouldn't have kept pets if I wasn't going to watch them properly. In high school, he spread rumors about me cheating on my girlfriend at the time, which caused us to break up. My parents said he was just being protective of her. This pattern has continued into our adult years. Ethan still lives at home with our parents, working at my dad's real estate office and basically doing whatever he wants. He's sabotaged every relationship I've tried to have. With my last girlfriend before Claire, he convinced her family that I had a gambling addiction. Completely false. Before that, he told another girlfriend that I had cheated on all my previous girlfriends. Also false. Each time my parents either defended his actions or accused me of exaggerating. When I met Claire, I decided to do things differently. I kept our relationship completely secret from my family for the first 3 months because I wanted to protect her from Ethan's usual tactics. Claire is honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's brilliant, compassionate, and works as a pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met in the hospital cafe where I was getting coffee while visiting a coworker who had surgery. She was on her lunch break, and we started talking about the horrible hospital coffee. After a few more coffee chats, we started dating, and everything just felt right. Claire knows all about my family history because I wanted her to be prepared. She was actually the one who encouraged me to try introducing her to them, saying that maybe things would be different now that we're all adults. She's always trying to see the best in people, which is one of the things I love about her. I finally agreed to introduce Claire to my family at a dinner party last month, and that's when everything started falling apart. The real problems started a few days after the dinner. Claire began getting strange calls and texts from numbers she didn't recognize. At first it was just heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups when she answered. Then they started leaving increasingly creepy voicemails calling her stuck-up and frigid for rejecting a better option. Some messages mentioned specific details about her work schedule and what she was wearing that day, proving someone was watching her. Claire didn't make the connection at first, but I recognized some of the voices as Ethan's old friends from high school, this group of guys who still hang around with him and basically do whatever he says because his parents give him money to throw around. When Claire blocked those numbers, they just started calling from new ones. Then Ethan's friends began showing up at the hospital, pretending to be visitors but just hanging around the pediatric ward where Claire works. They would stare at her for hours, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after her night shift. She was so scared she called me crying from her car, too afraid to drive home in case they were following her. When Claire called me crying from her car that night, I dropped everything. I drove straight to the hospital, picked her up, and had my buddy follow us in his car just to make sure no one was tailing us. I drove Claire's car home while she sat in mine, too shaken to even think about being behind the wheel. Lately, she's been having panic attacks before work and her coworkers have started noticing that something's seriously off. Yesterday, I finally had enough solid proof to confront Ethan face to face. I gathered everything, recordings of those disgusting voicemails, screenshots of the creepy texts, and even security footage from the hospital showing Ethan's buddies loitering around and stalking Claire. I went over to my parents' place, since Ethan still lives there, and laid it all out in front of him. He didn't even flinch. He just sat there with the smug, satisfied look on his face like he was proud of what he'd done. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said he had no idea what I was talking about. After a pause, he added that maybe if Claire wasn't such a stuck-up bitch, people wouldn't feel the need to put her in her place. I don't remember deciding to hit him. One second I was standing there, and the next I had punched him square in the face. He immediately started wailing like I'd stabbed him or something, even though all he had was a bloody nose. Right on cue, our parents came running in. And of course, they lost their minds at me, not him. They didn't even glance at the evidence I brought. My mom was in full meltdown mode, screeching about her poor baby being assaulted. My dad started yelling about how I've always been jealous of Ethan and that I clearly needed anger management or therapy. I tried explaining what really happened about the harassment and stalking, but my mom cut me off. She actually had the audacity to claim that Claire must have led Ethan on at the dinner, that she'd been flirting and was just playing the victim now that she'd gotten caught. My dad told me to get the hell out of his house and not come back until I apologized to Ethan and got my head on straight. So now I'm sitting here in Claire's apartment where I've been crashing since last night. She's finally asleep in the other room after crying herself out. She's terrified of going to work in the morning. Her supervisor's been understanding so far, but Claire's worried the situation is going to cost her the job she loves. She works with kids in the pediatric ward. She shouldn't have to give that up because my brother is completely unhinged. I'm honestly at a loss. Just when I think Ethan can't possibly get any worse, he outdoes himself. And my parents? They're enabling everything. They're gaslighting both of us, pretending we're the ones with the problem. The police haven't been any help either. Without hard proof that links Ethan directly to the harassment, they say there's not much they can do. Meanwhile, Claire's constantly on edge, her job might be on the line, and my family is acting like we're the villains. Has anyone else been through something like this? I feel like I've done everything I can, but it's not enough. Should I be doing more to document what's happening? How can I protect Claire while navigating this toxic mess of a family? Update 1. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who took the time to comment on my post. Hearing your stories and advice really drove home just how serious this is. Claire and I have been doing our best to follow your suggestions, especially around documenting everything and taking legal steps. Unfortunately, things have only gone downhill over the past 2 weeks, and I need to get this off my chest. We went to the police with all the evidence we had. We brought in printed screenshots of the threatening messages, saved voicemails, the security footage from the hospital showing Ethan's friends lurking, and even written statements from 3 of Claire's co-workers who saw what was happening firsthand. At first, the officer we spoke to seemed genuinely concerned, especially about the workplace harassment. But things shifted real fast. As soon as we mentioned Logan, Ethan's best friend and one of the guys who's been bothering Claire, the cop's whole vibe changed. That's when we found out Logan's dad is a sergeant on the force. After that, the officer suddenly got hesitant. He said that unless we could prove Ethan was directly pulling the strings, there wasn't much they could do. He even implied that maybe Claire was reading too much into things, suggesting those guys were just being friendly or hanging out. Then he straight up asked if Claire might have led them on. We asked to speak with a different officer, preferably a female one, but they gave us the runaround. Eventually, they agreed to issue warnings to the men we could ID from the footage, but that was all. No real action. Felt like we'd wasted our time. And as bad as that was, my parents somehow made it worse. The day after we talked to the police, Ethan showed up at their house sporting a black eye, claiming I had attacked him again. The kicker? I hadn't even seen the guy since the night I punched him 2 weeks ago. But of course, my parents believed every word out of his mouth. My mom called me sobbing, saying I was out of control and ruining Ethan's life. Then my dad got on the phone, livid, threatening to cut me off financially. Like that would scare me. I've got a solid job in software development and my own place. I haven't depended on them in years. He even threatened to fire me from the family business, as if I've ever worked at the real estate office. That's Ethan's gig, not mine. It just showed how little they actually know or care about my life. Then came the real train wreck. Over the weekend, my mom kept blowing up my phone with texts and voicemails, swearing they just wanted to fix things as a family. She said Ethan was sorry, that he wanted to apologize to both me and Claire. She promised they'd talk to him about boundaries and he finally understood he'd crossed a line. After a lot of back and forth, Claire and I decided to give them one last chance to make it right. That was a huge mistake. We walked into their house expecting a quiet family dinner. Instead, the place was full of people. My parents, Ethan, our aunt and uncle, who always back Ethan no matter what, and worst of all, Logan and 2 of the other guys who'd been harassing Claire at the hospital. My mom called it a family intervention. Like that somehow made what happened next okay. For 2 hours, they took turns tearing Claire apart, questioning her character, doubting her intentions. While Ethan just sat there with that smug little grin he always wears when he thinks he's in control. Mom launched into this unhinged rant about how Claire was probably jealous of Ethan's looks and success. And I still don't know what success she's talking about. She claimed Claire had been flirting with Ethan at dinner and was now making up stories because she felt guilty for leading him on. Then my aunt chimed in with her own theory, saying maybe Claire was just used to guys at work giving her attention, and that she must have misread the friendly behavior from Ethan and his buddies as something more sinister. According to her, it was all in Claire's guilty conscience. Ethan played his role perfectly, acting all heartbroken and confused. He kept saying how excited he'd been to have a sister-in-law and how crushed he was that she would invent such awful lies to turn me against him. His friends, including Logan, backed him up, insisting they only ever went to the hospital to visit Logan's sick grandmother. Apparently, this woman is a medical mystery who moves between hospital departments on a daily basis. But what really made my blood run cold was when they started going after Claire's mental health. They pointed out that she works night shifts and hinted that maybe the lack of sleep was making her paranoid. They said working with seriously ill children must be so emotionally draining that maybe she was projecting that stress onto innocent interactions. My mom actually had the nerve to recommend a therapist who might help her work through this need for drama. Claire tried to stay calm and rational. She explained the harassment again, even showed them the same messages and voicemails we'd collected. But no one listened. They either interrupted her or brushed everything off as misunderstandings, or worse, implied she had brought it on herself. And then Logan started describing, in way too much detail, what Claire had worn on specific days at work. That should have been damning evidence that he'd been stalking her. Instead, my parents treated it like proof that she'd been trying to attract male attention. The final straw was when they invited Logan and the others to join us for dessert. As if that would prove they were just misunderstood. Nice young men. That's when Claire started hyperventilating. She had to leave the room to catch her breath. I tried to follow her, but my mom grabbed my arm and told me it was time to choose between my real family and a girl who, according to her, was unstable and trying to tear us all apart. I chose Claire. We left immediately, and I haven't spoken to any of them since that night. Since then, things have only escalated. Ethan's friends have gotten bolder. They've been spreading rumors at Claire's hospital, telling people she's mentally unstable and has a history of making false accusations. Last week, her supervisor called her into a meeting to talk about all the drama. He was polite and seemed to sympathize, but he still warned her that all this disruption was starting to affect her job performance. He even suggested she might want to consider transferring to a different unit, or even to another hospital entirely. We've hired a lawyer and are working on getting restraining orders, but it's a slow process. Meanwhile, Claire's been looking for jobs elsewhere. One of her old co-workers offered to help her get a position at a hospital in a city about 300 miles away. It breaks my heart that we're even considering such a drastic move, but I can't keep watching her go through this. She cries before every shift now. She barely eats. She's lost weight. The anxiety is eating her alive. I don't know what else to do. Every time we try to handle things the right way, it blows up in our faces. My family is totally delusional. The police won't lift a finger without hard evidence. And Ethan keeps getting away with everything. It honestly feels like the more damage he causes, the more people believe his version of events. How do you fight back when everyone around you is determined to believe the worst about the victims and the best about the abuser? Update 2. I wish I had better news. I really do. But everything came crashing down at my cousin Jasmine's wedding last weekend, and I've been trying to wrap my head around it all before posting again. What should have been a joyful family celebration turned into a complete disaster. One that ended with Ethan being arrested and the family finally, officially, torn apart. A little context. Jasmine has always been one of the only people in the family, besides our grandpa, who's seen through Ethan's act. Back when we were kids, she caught him torturing her cat and told everyone. But my parents spun it into some ridiculous lie about her making things up for attention. She's never forgotten that. She's been on our side through all of this. She even submitted a detailed statement to our lawyer about Ethan's past behavior. When Jasmine sent us the wedding invitation, Claire and I were hesitant. But Jasmine personally called us and promised she only invited Ethan because her parents insisted. She told us she'd hired extra security just to keep an eye on him, and she made sure we'd be seated with her husband's family, far away from Ethan and our parents. We figured with all the people around and security in place, Ethan wouldn't dare pull anything. We were wrong. The ceremony itself went smoothly, probably because Ethan was busy being one of the groomsmen. Jasmine's husband, Derek, is from the other side of the family and didn't know the full story. During the reception, things seemed okay at first. Ethan was at the head table with our parents, and Claire and I were sitting across the room with Derek's relatives. It was the first time in weeks I saw her smile and relax a bit. Around 9 p.m., Claire got up to use the restroom. She'd been gone maybe 10 minutes when I realized Ethan wasn't at his table anymore. Something felt off, so I got up to check. As I made my way toward the bathrooms, I heard a scream. I ran. At the same time, Derek and his brother rounded the corner ahead of me. That's when we saw it. Ethan had Claire pinned against the wall in the hallway outside the bathrooms. One hand clamped over her mouth, the other gripping her arms so tightly it left bruises. She was trying to fight him off, but he was bigger and stronger, and it was clear what he was trying to do. Derek's brother, who's a cop in another city, called the local police the second he saw what was happening. Meanwhile, Derek helped get Claire out of there. He took her to a private room where Jasmine and her mom were trying to calm her down. That should have been the moment things got better. Instead, they got worse. Way worse. When the police showed up, my parents tried to stop the arrest. My mom started screaming about how it was all just a misunderstanding. She insisted Claire had led Ethan on and that we shouldn't ruin his life over what she called a little drunken mistake. My dad even physically tried to block the officers from handcuffing Ethan, yelling that this was a family matter and they had no right to get involved. Ethan, meanwhile, went full maniac. One second he was crying about how Claire seduced him, and the next he was threatening people, telling everyone they didn't know what he was capable of. He looked completely unhinged, totally out of control. And then, as they were putting him in the back of the police car, he lost it. Started screaming that Claire was a slut who'd been asking for it since the night they met. Several guests had their phones out by then and caught the whole thing on video. The fallout was brutal. My parents went into full damage control mode. They started calling everyone in the family to push their version of events. According to them, Claire lured Ethan into a secluded hallway and made a move on him. When he turned her down, she screamed assault to get back at him for exposing her lies about the harassment. They even claimed Derek and his brother had roughed Ethan up before the cops got there, which they didn't. And somehow in their twisted version, Claire gave herself those bruises. The one thing keeping us going right now is that the truth is on our side. Jasmine's wedding videographer caught Ethan following Claire toward the bathrooms on camera. That, along with the physical evidence, multiple eyewitnesses, and video footage of Ethan's outburst during the arrest, has given our lawyer confidence that we've got a solid case. Even some of the relatives who used to stay out of things have stepped up. They gave statements describing Ethan's behavior that night, including the inappropriate comments he made about Claire and how he was following her around the reception. But my parents? They doubled down. They told me that unless Claire dropped the charges, I was dead to them. They started blowing up my phone with a mix of guilt trips and threats, 1 minute crying about how I was tearing the family apart, the next warning me that I'd lose my inheritance. Then they showed up at my apartment. They caused such a scene that my neighbors ended up calling the police. My mom was sobbing on the front steps, saying I was sending her baby to jail. My dad, always the bully, shouted that he'd make sure I never worked in the state again. That was the final straw. Claire and I made our decision. She accepted the job offer at the hospital 300 miles away, and I arranged to go fully remote with my company. We're moving at the end of next month. Some people might say we're running away, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like finally escaping a war zone. We need space, peace, a clean start. Jasmine understands. She's promised to keep us in the loop if anything comes up with the family that we need to know about. The hardest part of all this? Knowing my parents will never admit Ethan has a problem. Not even after watching him assault a woman at a wedding in front of witnesses on camera. They're still blaming the victim. Still pretending he's the one who deserves sympathy. Sometimes I wonder if things would have turned out differently if someone had stepped in when we were kids. If someone had taken the warning signs seriously. But we'll never know. What I do know is that right now, my only priority is keeping Claire safe and building a better life together, far away from Ethan and my parents' toxic orbit. Update 3. I wasn't planning to post another update. Honestly, I thought that part of my life was behind me. But something happened yesterday that I can't ignore, and I feel like I need to share it. First, a quick update on where things stand. Claire and I got married 2 years ago. It was a small, beautiful ceremony with her family and Jasmine's family there to support us. We bought a home in our new city, and life has been, for the most part, peaceful. Claire's now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I'm still working remotely for the same company and got promoted to senior developer last year. And big news, we're expecting our first child. A baby girl. She's due in 3 months. Life has finally been good. Calm. Safe. Which is why yesterday hit so hard. I was in a work meeting when my phone started blowing up with unknown numbers, something I've learned to ignore since my family loves switching phones to get around being blocked. But one voicemail came through that sounded different. Desperate. It was my mom. I called back, mostly out of concern, and she was sobbing so hard I could barely make out what she was saying. It turns out Ethan got married last year to a woman named Lena. None of us knew, obviously. We've had no contact with that side of the family since the wedding incident. From what Mom said, Ethan met Lena through church and the families rushed into the marriage. Mom kept going on about how perfect Lena was, how she was the right kind of woman, a good Christian, someone who finally understood Ethan. Everything had been fine. Until last week. Last Thursday, one of Lena's coworkers called the police after she missed 3 days of work with no explanation. The cops did a welfare check, and what they found was horrifying. Lena had 2 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and bruises all over her body. The worst part? The police uncovered that my dad had been helping Ethan cover up the abuse for months. Lena eventually told the whole story. Ethan started hitting her barely 2 months into their marriage. Every time she tried to leave or threatened to tell someone, my dad would step in. He used his connections in the real estate world to intimidate her family, threatening their mortgage, trying to get her fired from her job at a company owned by one of his friends. He even convinced Lena's parents that she was mentally unstable and making it all up. The same playbook they used on Claire. The final straw came when Lena got a promotion at work, one that would have given her enough financial freedom to walk away. Ethan flipped. Beat her so badly she couldn't leave the house. When she called my dad for help, he told her to put some ice on it and remember her vows. That's when her coworker stepped in and called the police. Now, both Ethan and my dad are in jail. Ethan's facing multiple charges for domestic violence, and my dad's been arrested for witness intimidation and conspiracy. And my mom? She called me because she wants me to come back to help to support the family during this crisis. She said that no matter what, we're still family. That Ethan and Dad need me. She even had the gall to say Lena was clearly exaggerating everything, just like Claire supposedly had. I lost it. I told her exactly what I thought. That she's enabled Ethan his entire life. That everything that's happened, the pain, the trauma, the victims, started with her and Dad protecting him instead of holding him accountable. And then I hung up. I told my mom exactly what she needed to hear, that she and my dad chose to protect Ethan even after watching him assault Claire in front of a room full of witnesses. I asked her if she ever once considered that if they'd gotten Ethan help when he was a kid or held him accountable for any of the things he did, maybe Lena wouldn't be lying in a hospital bed right now. That's when she broke down completely. Through sobs, she admitted they had always known something was wrong with Ethan, that he had problems. But they thought they were helping by covering for him, hiding the truth instead of facing it. Protecting him, she called it. But they weren't protecting anyone. Too little. Too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Later, Jasmine called to fill me in on what she'd heard through the family grapevine. Lena's parents are heartbroken. They're devastated they didn't believe their daughter sooner. Now, they're fully supporting her in pressing charges against both Ethan and my dad. More than that, the police have started investigating other possible victims. Several of Ethan's ex-girlfriends have come forward with similar stories, accounts of stalking, manipulation, and abuse. Claire, as always, showed more grace than I could muster. She suggested we reach out to Lena through Jasmine just to let her know we're here if she needs anything. Claire said she was lucky to have someone stand by her when she went through it, and Lena might not have that right now. She's right. We probably will reach out. Some people might say I'm being cold toward my parents, but here's what I've learned. If you enable toxic behavior, all you're doing is setting up more victims. My parents had chance after chance to change course, and they never took it. Now they can deal with the fallout without me. My focus is on my family, my wife, our daughter on the way, and the peaceful life we've built far away from all that chaos. That's where my energy belongs. Update 4. A lot of people have been reaching out asking for updates on what's happened with Ethan, my dad, and Lena. So here's where things stand 6 months later. Let's start with the good. Claire and I welcomed our daughter, Sophie, 3 months ago. She's healthy, perfect, and absolutely beautiful. Becoming parents has been the most incredible experience of my life, and it's only made us more confident that cutting ties with my family was 100% the right call. Jasmine and her husband came to visit last month to meet Sophie. Watching them hold her, laugh with her, it reminded me what love and family are supposed to look like. Now for the rest. Thanks to Jasmine staying in touch with extended family, we've stayed updated on everything going on with the case. Ethan ended up taking a plea deal. He'll be serving 8 years in prison for aggravated domestic violence with the possibility of parole after 5. It's not enough, in my opinion, but at least it's something. My dad's case is still unfolding. His legal team is trying to negotiate a deal, but the charges are serious: witness intimidation and conspiracy. His real estate license has been suspended and most of his business partners have cut ties. His career is effectively over. The biggest surprise has been my mom. After our last phone call, the one where I told her how much damage they'd caused, she finally started therapy. According to Jasmine, she's moved out of the family home and filed for divorce. A week ago, she sent me a 12-page letter. In it, she apologized for everything, for enabling Ethan his whole life, for failing to protect me, and especially for how they treated Claire. She admitted they created the monster Ethan became by never holding him accountable. I haven't responded. Part of me appreciates that she's finally waking up to the truth. But it's hard not to wonder, where was this clarity when Ethan was torturing animals as a kid? Where was it when he stalked and humiliated Claire? Or when they stood by and watched him assault her at Jasmine's wedding? Claire and I have talked about it. We're considering someday letting my mom have a supervised relationship with Sophie. But that's years down the line, if it happens at all. Lena, on the other hand, has been in touch with us through Jasmine. She's doing better. She's living with her sister out of state, going through intensive therapy, and working closely with prosecutors. She's filed for divorce and is cooperating fully in the investigation. More women have come forward. 2 of them from Ethan's church. The police are digging into those cases now too. Lena's parents have completely turned things around. Since learning the truth, they've apologized publicly to their daughter, and they've cut off all ties with my parents. They're now working with domestic violence organizations, helping other families recognize the signs, trying to keep other people from making the same mistakes they did. As for our extended family, it's split down the middle. Most of the younger relatives and cousins have taken our side and Lena's. A few of the older generation are still making excuses for my dad and Ethan, still clinging to the fantasy that it's all just a big misunderstanding. Jasmine's mom, my aunt, has actually started a family therapy group. It's meant for relatives who want to understand how things got so bad and how to do better for future generations. As for us, we're good. Claire went back to work part-time last week and just got promoted. She's now the director of pediatric nursing. I'm still working remotely, but I've been thinking about starting my own software consulting firm. We've built a life here, a real one. We have amazing friends, chosen family, and a strong community that actually supports us. Sometimes I think about responding to my mom's letter. I really do. But then I look at Sophie, our little girl, and I remember what my parents would have said if we were still in contact. They would have told me to let Ethan meet her. Told me he deserved another chance. That he'd changed. And that thought alone makes the decision crystal clear. The cycle of abuse and enabling that poisoned my family ends here. With me. With Claire. With Sophie. She's going to grow up surrounded by love, honesty, and people who respect boundaries. And yeah, sometimes that means shutting the door on people who should have been family but made the choice not to be. Cutting off toxic relatives might hurt. But sometimes it's the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for your kids.